This is Tony Zoppi, who is the only newspaper man to talk to the sister of Jack Ruby after she visited with him in his cell. What did you gain from this?
She went up to see Jack about an hour ago, and I asked her what they talked about and how he was feeling and how did he look. And she said, "What can you tell on a phone through a glass?" I have a couple of notes here, which I'll just read extemporaneously if you want. She said he called her right after the president was shot and went over, and she said, "I could see he was extremely emotional. He called his brother in Detroit and broke out crying over the phone." Mrs. Grant, that's Jack Ruby's sister, said that their father died 5 years ago in Chicago, but Jack took the president's death even harder than his own father's death. She said he refused to eat all day Friday and just bought the papers and kept reading about this thing over and over again. And he kept talking about Jackie Kennedy and the Kennedy children. And he said it was ironic that the president was a man who could have done anything he wanted to do in life. He was qualified to do anything he wanted to do, and he had to wind up this way. I just couldn't get over that. And he kept asking his sister if she needed anything. He's still very concerned. They're from a very close-knit, old-fashioned type family, and he seemed more concerned about her, really. And he urged her to take care of herself and not to worry. He said, "I'm in good health." And they didn't discuss the shooting at all. He said the FBI and the officers up in the city jail here are treating him well. And he says, "I have friends." And she noted that when she was very young, around 16 years old, and she's 55 today. Jack is 2 years younger than she is, and she told how they grew up together in a very tough neighborhood in Chicago, and he was always very protective and would walk her through the neighborhood and make sure that she got home all right and that sort of thing.
Was it mentioned that Ruby received a Western Union telegram today, or money order?
No, nothing was mentioned about that. She said, I'll quote this, it's quite a quote, she said, "He loved every president, that's the problem." In other words, he had this intense feeling, very proud of, he's a first-generation American, and his parents came from Poland, and he was very, very proud of the President Eisenhower, Truman, all of them. He was very fond of Truman, it seems, because this was sort of a self-made man, and Jack has only had 2 years of high school education, and he was quite impressed that someone like Mr. Truman, who doesn't have a college education, could have gained the highest office in the land. There are 8 children in the Ruby family, and 5 of them have college educations. She said her father was, quote, a very religious old Jewish carpenter.
This is the sister's father.
Jack and his sister, yes. And said Jack was very religious. As a matter of fact, he went to the synagogue yesterday afternoon. He attends the Shereth Israel congregation here in Dallas. And she termed her brother an easy touch in that she said oftentimes he leaves home with money to pay bills, and he'll go down the street and people along the way will ask him for money and he'll stop and give it, and by the time he gets to the place where he's supposed to pay his bills, he doesn't have enough money left to pay them. And she said she was invited to lunch today and was getting dressed when the news came over the television that her brother had shot Oswald, and she went into hysterics. She said yesterday Jack spent the afternoon watching television here on Channel 8, and he was watching the playback of the Kennedy years, and she said he cried throughout the show. He was extremely emotional. And she said her brother called minutes after he learned of the president's death, and he was sick. A newsman here in town called him immediately following the assassination of President Kennedy and wanted to know if Jack Ruby was going to close his nightclubs. He has 2 nightclubs here, and they wanted to know if he was going to close down for the night. And he said not only was he going to close for the night, but he had decided to close for 3 nights and possibly 4. He said, how could anyone go night clubbing at a time like this? And in closing, after he hung up from that conversation, and let me say this, as a nightclub editor, I know it takes quite a bit of money to operate one of these things and close them down, because you've still got expenses. You have your rent and your floor show and your band and all to pay. And he told his sister, he says, we ain't got no money, but we don't need it that bad.
And that's the story.
That's it.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Okay.
Another look at the man who killed Mr. Oswald. This is Bill Lord reporting from the City Hall.